Alright, so continuing with our look at the new one D&D Unearthed Arcana Expert Classes document. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Rogue. If you missed other ones, there will be links in the description down below for the Ranger and the Bard, and also my first take on the information we got from the video about this release. Aside from that, let's just jump into it with the Rogue from the Expert Classes Unearthed Arcana. I'm going to keep the D&D Beyond Rogue, the 5e Rogue, open over here, and then we have the document here, so we can sort of compare as we go down the list. Now I've looked ahead a bit, and I can tell you that the features are mostly unchanged. We have the martial weapons that have the finesse property as weapon proficiencies instead of hand crossbows, longswords, rapiers, and sword swords. So there is a bit of a difference there. Nothing major, and we don't really know which weapons are going to have the finesse property yet, so hard to say whether there's a buff or a nerf here. Moving down, I believe that everything else is the same, or at least very close to it. So what's really interesting to take a look at is, of course, the class features. And if we feast our eyes on this list we have here in the PDF and compare it a bit, we can see that it's mostly the same. There are not any huge changes here. What we will be missing is blind sense down here at level 14, and we have something called subtle strikes. But beyond that, it's more or less the same, though some stuff has been moved around. But let's go down the list and see exactly what we have. First off is expertise. No surprises there. Nothing's changed. That's the same as before, and it also comes at first level as before. Then we have sneak attack, and sneak attack is also the same. It's just written in a different way. There are no real changes here, except for one major change, and that is once on each of your turns when you take the attack action, which is different because before it was once per turn you can deal. So unless the attack action is something you can now do as a reaction, which I haven't seen, that means no more sneak attacking as a reaction, which was something you would probably do if you were optimizing your rogue. You'd make sure to get some reaction attacks. Well, that's no longer an option because sneak attacks now only is on your own turn when you take the attack action. Whether or not that's a big nerf, that depends on how you play your rogue, but it is overall a significant nerf to the rogue's potential damage output, I would say. So it's interesting to see what they've done to sort of compensate for that, if anything. Thieves Can't, just a ribbon feature, nothing that I'm gonna go too deep into. Then we have Cunning Action, that's also still at second level, and it's the same. Rogue subclass or archetype, also at third level as before. But now you get the remaining levels for it as 6th, 10th, and 14th, just like the Bard and the Ranger. So it's not 9th, 13th, and 17th anymore. So still 4 features, nothing too big changed there. They will get some of the features a bit earlier, probably. Moving on down the list, we have Uncanny Dodge at 5th level. That's the same, nothing changed here either. Expertise at 6th level instead of 7th level. So that's changed a bit. The 1D&D Rogue gets their expertise at 7th level instead of 6th level, and that's because they get that subclass feature at 6th level. And then they get a feat at 8th level, like you normally would, and then evasion is at 9th level instead of 7th level. So evasion is obviously a quite good feature for the Rogue. It's a archetypical feature, and they're getting that a few levels later, but it's nothing that's too major of a debuff. I'd say it's not a big nerf to get that 2 levels later, in my opinion. And then we have Reliable Talent, still at level 11. Reliable Talent is, as far as I can tell, the same ability check that you're proficient in. Yeah, so now it only applies to skills or tools, but that's probably not. There may be some edge cases where it no longer works, but I can't really think of any right now. Then we have a feat at 12th, and we have subtle strikes at 13th level. So that's not something the rogue had before, and it means that when you attack a creature that is within 5 feet of an not incapacitated ally, you have an advantage on attack roll, which is obviously quite nice, getting advantage in a lot of situations with that. So this is a powerful buff for the rogue. What they lose is blind sense, so they no longer have that ability to see creatures within 10 feet of them. The Ranger has that now instead, so that's probably why, so they're not stepping on each other's toes. I can see that being a slight debuff, but we are all the way up at 14th level, and not the hugest thing, I would say. And you could also say that as long as you have an ally within 5 feet of that invisible creature, the advantage disadvantage is going to even out anyways, so it's basically more or less the same. And then we have a subclass feature at 14th level, and Slippery Mind has been buffed because it now also gives proficiency in charisma saving throws. So that's not a huge buff, but there are some charisma saving throws out there, and getting proficiency in those is obviously not a bad thing. We have a feat at 16th level, and then we have Elusive at 17th level, which was 18th level before. The feature itself is the same. You get it 1 level early. Again, not a huge deal. And then you get Stroke of Luck, which is coming in at 18th level instead of 20th level, and it gives you the opportunity to turn a failed d20 test into a roll of 20. Now, if I'm reading this correctly, and could be that I'm not, that means you can make an attack roll be a critical hit. If you fail a d20 test, you could turn the roll into a 20, because critical hits say, let's go for attack roll. Yeah, I would think that it makes it a critical hit, but I'm not entirely sure. If you have any opinion on that, please leave a comment down below. It sort of depends on the specifics of the wording, and it might be something you'd actually need to get clarification for. All right, just scrolling back down to the rogue. Okay, so that's the base rogue. You also, of course, get the epic boon at 20 level and the feat at 19 level. The epic boon stuff is something they're doing for all of these expert classes. So before we dive into whether or not the rogue, what place that leaves the rogue in, let's also take a look at the rogue subclass we're given, and that's the thief subclass. And I'm just going to roll down here for the original thief. We have fast hands that allows you to take the search action, which is a new action, and the sleight of hand, which you can also do as a bonus action now. So it's more or less the same. You get the opportunity to take the search action, but yeah, nothing too major here. It's pretty ripping. And then we have second story work, where you get a climb speed equal to your speed, and when you take the jump action, you can make a dexterity check instead of a strength check to see how far you can jump. There's some new jump rules in the glossary as well. Before you, there was just, it's a better wording for climbing now, and yeah, so it's more or less again the same. Really, for me, not very overwhelming. I still think the Thieves 3rd level features are just not very good. Basically, I don't see that many needs to jump further or use sleight of hand as a bonus action. It's not something that comes up a lot, in my opinion. We have Supreme Sneak at 6th level now instead of 9th, and it gives you advantage on every dexterity check, stealth check you make. Provided, okay, so basically you get advantage on stealth, and they just removed the if you move no more than half your speed things. So basically just even better stealth. That's it. With advantage and expertise and stealth, you're going to be very, very stealthy. And the nice thing is it comes at a level 6, so it's something I would actually see play in a lot of games, as opposed to before, because 9th level is maybe 20% of games get to 9th level, I'd say. Then we have Use Magic Device, which allows you to attune to up to 4 magic items. So that's something. And when you use charges, you can roll d6. On a roll of 6, you use a property without expending charges. And you can use any spell scroll. You can use any spell scroll that bears a cantrip or a first level spell. You can also try to use any spell code that contains a higher level spell, but you will first succeed on intelligence check. Blah 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 blah. So compared to before, you would ignore all class, race, and level requirements on the use of those magic items. So this is something that's very dependent on the game you're playing. I think attuning to 4 magic items at once is that's actually big. That's a big thing to get an extra attunement slot if the campaign you're playing has a lot of magic items. Likewise, being able, as it was before, to ignore all requirements was huge if the DM puts those kind of items in front of you. For me, this one was very dependent on the game you played. Attunement to 4 magic items is still, but less so, because it's more likely that you will just be able to pick up some magic items that require attunement. The charges thing is always useful. If you have items with charges, obviously, but there are a lot of those. And then the scroll thing is also maybe not super useful, but being able to cast spells even though you aren't a spellcaster from scrolls is actually pretty significant. You could argue that you could just take a single level of wizard and you'd get a bunch of stuff and this ability, basically. But yeah, I think the Use Magic Device is quite nice as it is. Then we have Thief Reflexes at 14 level. A second bonus action in turn provided is the bonus action from Cunning Action. You can use a feature on a number of turns equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. And before it was 2 turns during the first round of any combat, and you take your first and normal turn, a second. Okay, so I don't know. I think Thieves Reflexes was very, very nice. Did come in at 17 level, so very edge cases you'd get to use it. Now at 14 level, you get to take extra bonus actions. If you have something you should do with those bonus actions, it's good. I probably think Thieves Reflexes was better because you'd make attacks with those with that action you got, whereas bonus action attacks are a bit more rare, and it's provided that you use the Cunning Action thing, so you have to have a cage where you want to hide, disengage, dash, and then also do something else that is beneficial. So yeah, I think this is overall a bit worse. So is the new Thief subclass better or worse? I think it's probably all told about the same, and it probably will function better because the good abilities come in earlier. Still not a subclass I can see a lot of people taking, basically. So where does this leave the Rogue? Overall, I'd say I don't think too much has changed with the Rogue, and I think that's all right because a lot of people were satisfied with the Rogue, as far as I've heard. The Rogue has never really been for me because I think it's very much so a one-trick pony, in combat at least. It's just damage, 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 while outside of combat is obviously a fun character, but you can build a bard, I'd say, that would be just as good as everything the Rogue is good at outside of combat, and the only thing you'll be missing is sneak attack, which is, to me, is not the most interesting feature. I think comparing it to the bard is fair. They're both expert classes, and I think the bard in this playtest has a leg up on the Rogue still, and a quite significant one because spellcasting is just so powerful, and taking away the Rogue's opportunities to max out the damage by doing reaction attacks, that really gimps the optimized Rogue builds out there. So I'm not seeing a lot of huge buffs for the Rogue. Subtle strikes is good, very good, and then Slippery Mind got buffed a bit. Elusive got, no, that's the same. It just came in a level early. So yeah, not seeing a lot of huge buffs to it, not seeing a lot of huge differences at all. So maybe a slight nerf to the Rogue. And I think for me, that's the wrong direction to go. I would have hoped that Wizards of the Coast would buff these non-spellcasting classes. In this playtest, the Rogue is the only non-spellcasting class, and I would have really liked to see Wizards of the Coast say, all right, we're going to do something for the Rogue because the Ranger has spells, the Bard has spells. What can we do for the Rogue to make it a bit more interesting? And I don't see that in this particular format for the Rogue. So yeah, the Rogue is pretty much where it was before, except maybe a bit weaker. Yeah. I'm going to be covering more stuff from the 1D&D playtest. Hopefully get some more videos out today or over the weekend. If you want to stay tuned for that, you can subscribe to the channel down below. And I think that beyond that, there's not a whole lot left to say, except thank you so much for watching. And I hope that I'll see you in the next video.